Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let's get right into today's story, and trust me, you've never heard one start like this. She didn't see me right away. They were too busy leaning in close, clinking wine glasses, and whispering things I stopped hearing from her months ago. The restaurant was buzzing, soft jazz, dim lighting, the kind of place people choose when they want to feel expensive. I didn't belong there, but I walked in anyway. The hostess tried to stop me. I ignored her. I wasn't there to eat. I was there to return something I should have buried months ago. My hand was clenched in my jacket pocket, fingers wrapped tight around a gold ring that used to mean something. It had left a faint mark on my skin, like a scar that refused to fade. She gave it back to me once. The day she told me she needed space. But space, apparently, meant making room for a man in tailored pants and teeth too white to be real. Her back was to me, brown curls cascading down her favorite green dress, the one she wore on our second anniversary. I remember complimenting her that night, telling her she looked like springtime. Now, sitting across from her was a man who probably said the same thing, and meant something different entirely. I reached the table and placed the ring between them, right next to her untouched creme brulee. She turned and froze. "Ellison?" she breathed. "That's my name, Ellison. You won't hear it shouted in this story. I'm not the dramatic type. I don't cause scenes. I leave quietly, and I leave a mark." The man raised his eyebrows, confused. She looked like someone had drained the blood from her face. I finally spoke. "I figured this would be a good place for closure. You always loved this place." Then I turned to leave. But as I walked away, a hand grabbed my arm. Not hers, his. What he said next made everyone at the surrounding tables stop chewing. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her. And what unraveled after that was far more twisted than anything I could have imagined. "You must be Ellison," the man said, gripping my arm with a little too much confidence, like he had just cornered a rabbit. "She told me about you." His voice was smooth, like a radio host who thought he was smarter than the music he introduced. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because my body couldn't decide if it wanted to fight, cry, or collapse. "She said you wouldn't take it well," he added, his smile calm but eyes scanning me like I was some fragile creature about to break. I stared at him. His tie alone probably cost more than what I made in a week. I remember thinking he had the hands of a man who never did dishes. But what got me wasn't how perfect he looked. It was how comfortable he was at my table, in her space, in the life I used to believe was mine. April hadn't spoken yet. She just sat there, still frozen, one hand halfway to her wine glass like she couldn't decide whether to drink or disappear. I glanced at her once. Her face was unreadable, but I knew that look. It was the same one she gave when she broke a promise and hoped I wouldn't make it a big deal. "Let go of me," I said, not loudly, but clearly enough. He hesitated, then raised both hands and stepped back. Still smiling like this was some scene he'd rehearsed before. And maybe it was. I turned to leave again, but this time April stood up. Her chair scraped loudly, turning heads. "Ellison, wait," she said, her voice soft but shaking. I paused. Not because I wanted to, but because some stupid, leftover part of me still wanted her to have a reason, any reason, for why she was here with him, wearing that dress, laughing the way she used to laugh with me. "It's not what you think," she began. That line, the universal anthem of every person caught mid-lie. But before I could respond, he spoke again. "Actually," he said, "eyes still on me. You might want to sit down for this. There's something she hasn't told you." The world tilted a little. Not from shock, I was past that. It was something else. Like dread with a heartbeat. I didn't sit, but I stayed. And what came out of his mouth next didn't just confirm my worst fear. It shattered the past 6 years of my life in a single, unforgiving sentence. "She's moving in with me next week," he said, folding his arms like this was some business update I'd asked for. "She was waiting for the right time to tell you. I guess now works." My ears rang. For a second, I thought I misheard him. But April didn't deny it. She didn't even blink. She just stood there, eyes wide, hands trembling slightly at her sides. She looked at me like a stranger. like I'd wandered into the wrong restaurant, sat at the wrong table, and interrupted a future that had no place for me in it. Is that true? I asked her, my voice breaking before the question even finished leaving my mouth. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The way her eyes dropped told me everything. I felt something in my chest twist. Not break. Twist. Like someone took a piece of my heart and wrung it out slowly. He pulled her chair out. I told you he'd find out eventually. Better now than dragging it out. I looked down at the ring still sitting on the table. Suddenly felt ridiculous. Too small. Too circular. A perfect loop of promises she had no intention of keeping. I wondered if they'd laughed about me. If he knew my favorite songs because she made fun of them. If she ever told him how I used to leave notes in her lunch bag. Or how I once drove 2 hours just to bring her soup when she had the flu. You were just going to leave? I asked, barely above a whisper. April finally looked at me. I wasn't planning to hurt you, Elle, she said, using the nickname I hadn't heard in months. But I need something different. I don't love you like I used to. There it was. Not a scream. Not a slap. Just a quiet bullet to the chest. The man, whose name I still didn't know, gestured toward the door. You should go, man. She's made her choice. And somehow I did. My legs moved even though my brain screamed to stand still. As I stepped out into the cold night air, I realized I hadn't said goodbye. Not because I forgot, but because I knew if I opened my mouth I'd beg. I'd crumble. And the one thing I had left, my dignity, didn't deserve to die in a French restaurant under dim lighting and her lover's smug grin. But that wasn't the end. That night, when I got home, something strange happened. Something that made me realize I hadn't been the only one keeping secrets. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, with the overhead light off and the hallway light barely creeping through the door. I wasn't crying. I wish I had been. I was just stuck, like my brain was buffering, caught between disbelief and the reality I now had to live with. At around 3:30 a.m., I grabbed her laptop, not out of revenge or curiosity, but because I needed to cancel her flight. We had planned a weekend getaway to Vermont for our anniversary, her idea, ironically. I figured she wouldn't bother deleting anything, not with how careless she'd become. The laptop opened without a password. I went to her email, typed reservation, and hit search, and that's when it happened. Buried between hotel confirmations and ads was a string of emails between her and someone named Marcy. I didn't know a Marcy, but April sure did. The subject lines were vague at first. Got the pills. Use the Cash App. Don't tell him yet. I clicked, and what I read almost made me drop the laptop. They weren't about cheating. Not directly. They were about me. Ellison's still clueless. He thinks I'm going to Vermont with him. I told you he's fragile. One wrong word and he'll fall apart. Another one said, thanks for getting the prescription. I needed it for the panic attacks. Being around him is like walking on eggshells. I sat back, stunned. She'd never said a word about being anxious. She used to joke that I worried too much, that I overanalyzed everything. But here she was, behind my back, building a case that I was the one slowly driving her crazy. And worse, she had help. I kept scrolling. One message from Marcy stood out. You've got to stop lying to him. If he finds out what you're planning before the move, he could ruin everything. Move? I froze. What was she planning? What else hadn't she told me? I checked the most recent email. It was sent that morning, the same day she was supposed to meet me for lunch but canceled last minute. It included a scanned signature. My signature. Attached was a fake lease document, co-signed by me, authorizing her to sublet our apartment. That's when I realized she wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me. I didn't go to work the next day. Couldn't. I was halfway dressed when I caught myself staring in the mirror, holding my tie in one hand, unable to remember how to knot it. My reflection looked hollow. My skin felt too tight on my face. The only thing moving was the thought. She forged my name. She was going to erase me without even telling me to leave. I needed answers, and I knew I wasn't getting them from April. So I went to the only person who might tell me the truth without sugarcoating it, her mother. Now, I know what you're thinking. What kind of man runs to his mother-in-law after his marriage explodes? But here's the thing. Judith and I had always been close. She once told me that I was the only man April had ever brought home that she didn't want to toss out with the trash. So I drove to her house, unannounced, shaking the whole way. She opened the door, surprised, but not alarmed. One look at my face and she just said, "Tea or coffee?" I muttered tea, and we sat at her kitchen table in silence for a while. Then I told her everything. The ring at the restaurant, the man, the emails, the forged lease, all of it. I expected her to gasp or get angry or defend her daughter. But she just closed her eyes like she'd been waiting for this conversation for years. "I tried to warn her," Judith said, folding her hands. "But she doesn't listen. She never has." That's when she leaned in and told me something I'll never forget. "She's not moving in with him, Ellison. That man, the one at the restaurant, he's just one of many. She's moving out because she's taking a job across the country. Has been planning it for months. You were never in the plan." My heart sank deeper. Then who forged my signature? She did. With help. Her old college roommate is some kind of paralegal. They've been playing this game together since June. And the job? San Diego. She accepted it 2 months ago. Was going to leave you a note and vanish like you were an old apartment lease she outgrew. It was like she had died while I was still talking to her the night before. She'd already left, emotionally, physically, everything. I just hadn't noticed. Judith stood and left the room briefly. When she came back, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed photo, a group shot. In the center, April and that same man from the restaurant. Only this time he was holding her waist and wearing a wedding ring. I stared at the photo like it had the power to rewrite everything. The same man who grabbed my arm at the restaurant, who smirked at me like he'd already won. He was married. Not just in theory. The gold band on his finger glinted like it was mocking me. And the worst part? April looked happy, relaxed, like someone who finally stopped pretending. Judith took the photo back gently and sighed. "His name's Griffin. He's an orthopedic surgeon. Wife, 2 kids. Lives in Brookline. April met him during a fundraiser gala. You weren't invited to that one, remember?" I remembered. She told me it was a +1 situation and that spouses would just slow things down. I believed her. I'd spent that night fixing our leaky kitchen faucet and eating leftover Chinese food by myself. Judith poured more tea without asking. She thinks Griffin's going to leave his wife. She always thinks that about the men she meets. But they never do. That hit me like a slap. "Wait, this isn't the first time?" She hesitated. "Ellison, you're a good man. Maybe too good. But April's been chasing things her whole life. Status, thrill, tension. And if I'm being honest, she lost interest in you the moment you stopped trying to impress her." I wanted to yell, to ask why no one had told me sooner. But I already knew the answer, because I wouldn't have believed it. I would have defended her. I would have said, "She's just stressed." Or, "We've been distant, but she's loyal." I was too loyal for both of us. I left Judith's house with one thing burning in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal wrapped in layers of lies. April wasn't leaving me for love. She was leaving me for fantasy. For another mirage that would disappear the moment it became real. I didn't sleep that night either. I stared at the ceiling, wondering what my next move should be. Confront Griffin? Contact his wife? Out April publicly? None of those sounded like me. But then I had an idea. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was truth, packaged the way April never expected. And I'd deliver it at the worst possible moment. The idea took shape slowly, like a bruise spreading under skin. I didn't want to cause chaos for the sake of it. I'm not built like that. But after everything I'd uncovered, silence would have meant approval. And I was done being the guy who nodded while everything around him collapsed. I didn't confront Griffin in person. I knew where he worked. One search of April's email confirmed that. But showing up would have made me the villain in their story. No, I wanted the truth to land where it hurt the most, in his carefully curated life. So I wrote a letter. Not to Griffin. To his wife. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. I just told her the truth. Dates, locations, screenshots of April's calendar entries that matched weekends he'd been out of town. And the email where April mentioned G. Bringing the wine again, same hotel, suite 308. I printed it, sealed it, and mailed it from a different zip code. It felt like I was setting something free. Not out of cruelty, but justice. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone. But April had spent months writing me out of the life I helped build. If she wanted to burn bridges, she could watch one crumble behind her. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. April didn't call. Griffin didn't show up at our apartment. It was like the world had gone numb. Until Saturday morning, 4 days before she was set to leave for San Diego. She walked through the door, unannounced. She looked rough. Hair messy, eyes swollen, like she hadn't slept. She wasn't carrying suitcases. Just her purse and a look I hadn't seen since the night her father died. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I didn't answer. "You sent something to her. To Griffin's wife." She showed him. "He's not leaving her. He blocked my number." She sat down like her legs couldn't hold her. For once, she wasn't smug. She wasn't in control. "You ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I finally said. "You did." She stared at me, waiting for me to yell, to cry, to argue. But I didn't, because I still had one final move. And she had no idea what it was. She sat there for a long time, blinking into silence like she was waiting for the universe to reverse itself. Maybe she thought I'd break down and offer her a way back in. That I'd grab her hand, cry, say we could fix it. But I'd done enough breaking, enough waiting. And the man she threw everything away for? He wasn't coming to save her. She tried bargaining. Said she could cancel the San Diego job, said she just needed time. That she'd been confused. That Griffin had misled her. That I had misunderstood everything. I didn't say much. I just let her talk herself into circles. Then I stood up, walked to the hall closet, pulled out a small box I'd been keeping for this exact moment, and handed it to her. Inside were the rest of her things. Photos, notes, a bracelet she once dropped under the couch. But also, on top, was a letter. My letter. I had written it the night I sent the message to Griffin's wife. It wasn't angry. It was honest. I told her everything I had wanted to say for the past year. How I felt invisible. How she turned our marriage into a stage play where I didn't even have a speaking role. I told her I still hoped she found something real one day. Just not here. Not with me. She cried. And I let her. She walked out 30 minutes later with that box. No luggage. No drama. No more lies. Just silence and the soft click of the door behind her. 2 weeks later, I got a handwritten thank you card from Griffin's wife. No threats. No legal talk. Just gratitude. "You didn't just open my eyes," she wrote. "You gave me back my voice. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. I'm not going to pretend I magically healed overnight. I still reach for a second coffee cup some mornings. But for the first time in years, I'm breathing without permission. I'm alone, and that no longer feels like a punishment. Sometimes the cleanest endings come not from revenge, but from reclaiming yourself. What about you? Have you ever uncovered a hidden truth that changed everything in your life? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear something bold from your own history. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions, where real stories remind us how strong we really are.